We've gotten so far away from those founding principles of individual liberty and personal responsibility that that the countries were founded on. Consent of the governed. We no longer have that. We no longer have the kind of values that the country started with. And that was why I wanted to leave the US, was because I saw the loss of freedom, that the changes in the culture were making it more difficult for people to serve their fellow man, to start businesses. It used to be very easy to start new enterprises, to be innovative, to create new means of serving customers. And that's changed in the US. And I think the same for Canada, that more and more regulations have piled on. More and more of the larger companies have captured the government through various means, campaign donations or capturing regulatory agencies or whatever, that it's more difficult now to create a new startup innovative company in the US than it used to be.
Welcome to the age of reinvention. Eco-living, free cities, and intentional communities. A multi-layered topic that will inform and inspire people looking for living projects where they can be around like-minded people and enjoy selected lifestyles and personal freedom. I'm Emily Bron, and today we've got a fascinating episode for you. We are diving into the visionary world of special jurisdictions and how they can lead to the better governance, a topic more relevant today than ever in our rapidly changing world. Joining us is a remarkable thought leader in the domain of governance innovation, Joyce Brand. Joyce has advocated for free cities and special jurisdictions as a pathways to better governance through her work with the Free City Foundation and her insightful writing that challenge us to reimagine our approach to society and governance. Today, we will explore the inspirations behind Free City Foundation, dissect the governance models that promise to reshape our future, and delve into what this innovation means for us and future generations. Hello, Joyce.
Hello.
Having you with us today is a great honor.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
First of all, what inspired the creation of the Free City Foundation? And how does its mission align with the concepts discussed in your writing, in your book, on promoting better governance through jurisdictions? What is behind this?
The Free Cities Foundation started originally with Tita Skebbel, a German entrepreneur, businessman, who wrote a book called Free Private Cities, where he talked about the advantages of governance that's voluntary and contractual. Cities where there's a city operator that provides the environment for people to live in, and they pay a fee to live there, but they don't pay taxes. It's not political. They accept, they want to live under the rules that are offered by that city. They have a contract with the city so that they can have the standing to, if the rules can't be changed on them, the taxes can't be changed on them. If the city manager does not deliver the services promised, is a real contract, and they can be sued for damages. And this concept of a voluntary contractual governance, where the rules are clear to everyone and can't be changed, and they're accepted freely and voluntarily, it was something that was an idea that I had been aware of from the writings of Spencer Heath and my friend Spencer Heath McCallum. But this was the foundation. He founded the Free Cities Foundation, and he also started a for-profit company, Tipolis. But the foundation has continued the mission of spreading the word of the concepts of I use the terms voluntary contractual governance. The Free Cities Foundation is really interested in special areas where there's more freedom on offer. And the idea that free cities can choose their governance and compete, and people will choose which kind of government, which rules they want to live under. And they work on the incentives rather than political incentives. The success of the company, the community depends on the customers rather than citizens who have an obligation to vote and do all of these other things. So that's the mission. I believe in that, but my interests are more in a specific model of voluntary contractual governance where it's under that umbrella, but it's more a matter of landowners are the natural people to provide public goods. Like, to me, the three most important things are security, infrastructure, and some kind of legal structure to handle disputes and things like that. And that's what my book is about, which I have to show immediately.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting work that I believe will be starting point for people to be more familiar because the topic is big. And every time I'm reading any related article and materials, I just diving deeper and deeper to different aspects of it. Can you draw the parallels between the historical precedents of self-governing territories or communities and the modern iteration of free cities as a solution to governance challenges? I know examples of Venetian independence, Genoa, like different city countries like Dubrovnik, Kotor, like it was in previous times, but they were examples of economical development, which was prosperous for the time. But what are the parallels and difference between today's city foundation and historical examples we can find?
Yeah, the city-states were in some ways, maybe to say the difference is those city-states were ruled by someone who was given the authority to make the rules. It was sometimes hereditary. The rulers were different city-states had very different rules. So in that sense, there was a very good parallel of competition between cities. But because we didn't have the technology and the transportation, it was very difficult for people to move from one city to another. So it was basically, if they were born in one city-state, that's where they lived their whole lives. And they really didn't have the freedom to say, no, I don't like these rules. I think I'll move to another one. It was just not as easy. The difference today is that we can create city-states with different rules all over the world, and people can easily move. It's just not easily because obviously that's the relocation, the cutting ties with your culture and where you've been used to, and going to a completely different place. There are certainly challenges, but the difference is it's much easier now. You can find like-minded people and the kind of environment you want in a small jurisdiction, and those small jurisdictions can compete with each other because it's so much easier to relocate now than it was back in those days.
And even to receive information about this or other place.
And yes, information. Yeah, people did not have the information about the other city-states where they might say, oh, I'll just move from Venice to Genoa, or, relatively close cities. In those days, it was not easy. There are a lot of intentional communities that can have a de facto autonomy just because they're not part of or they're not, I don't know, close enough to the seats of power, I guess you could say. To me, the ideal is to have legal autonomy so that you can make rules like those city states did, the specific rules, but with the difference that these are run by entrepreneurs. Modern free cities are basically run by entrepreneurs who design the kinds of rules and environment and services that they believe their customers will want. And the customers decide whether they want to live in that environment or not. And that keeps the people providing the government services, it keeps them honest because they've got to be providing the services they promised, or not only will they lose residents, but the residents can sue them for damages for not keeping their word. So this is largely due to the technology we have today and the information we have today. We can now make much better choices about what environment we want to live in and be able to relocate to that environment in ways that just weren't possible at all in earlier years.
Absolutely. And when I'm thinking about examples, slight might be different model of governments like Singapore, like Hong Kong. It's a kind of city country on island. But as far as I know, many or some project of Free City Foundation, they located inside of countries. And speaking about legal perspective here, I don't understand how it's working because the community, the intentional community of Free City, legally on a territory of independent, say, for example, Portugal, Spain, Mexico, or other country. It's how it would not create kind of some, I don't know, tension or maybe contractual agreement between this particular territory of, say, Free City and local government, which actually owns the territory.
That's one of the things that a lot of countries around the world are struggling with, economic problems of various kinds. And it has now been proven with places like Singapore and Hong Kong and Shenzhen and Dubai. It's been proven that more economic freedom equates to greater prosperity. And special economic zones have, in the last few years, really in the last maybe 20, 30, maybe even 40 years, have proven that you can have special territories with different rules. Now, most of the special economic zones that have been in existence for a while, with the exception of cities like Shenzhen or Dubai or whatever, they've been more just industrial or like business parks with no residents, because it is much more difficult to create an environment for residents than if it's just for businesses. And the legal autonomy, the way that works, and for my example, I'd like to use Honduras because it is the most advanced legal autonomy of anywhere on the planet from the government. It was Hondurans who decided they wanted to bring prosperity to Honduras. They decided that their free zones, which were strictly industrial, had been successful to a certain extent, but not as much as they wanted. And that by having special jurisdictions rather than just economic zones, administrative jurisdictions and residents, they could bring more prosperity to Honduras. And that was the plan of the Hondurans who conceived of the idea of free cities in Honduras. And they passed a law called the Zones for Employment and Economic Development, ZEDE, in the Spanish acronym. And the ZEDEs were supposed to bring prosperity, and they were designed to bring prosperity. And unfortunately, there was a lot of corruption in the government, and it took a while for the law was passed in 2013, but it was 2020 before the first two ZEDEs with residents broke ground, and that was Prospera and Ciudad Morazan. And those two projects broke ground in 2020 and started building, and they immediately did have the effect that they wanted. Even in their tiny, just beginning stages, they did bring jobs to Honduras, that was the point, employment and economic development. So they were working, but they weren't far enough along to be considered proof. And then in election of 2021, the Honduran people were tired of the corruption of the government, and they thought that this new government, which was admittedly very socialist, admirers of Venezuela and Cuba, they thought that new government would be less corrupt and bring the prosperity they wanted. Of course, that was not the case. Obviously, socialism did not bring prosperity to Venezuela or Cuba or any country historically. And so that government was hostile to the Zedes. But in spite of that, because the Hondurans who created the law were afraid of that happening, they had written in a lot of guarantees and international treaties and things like that would prevent a new government from destroying the Zedes. And so they've continued to grow. And for 4 years now, coming on 4 years, they have proven more and more that they're creating jobs and creating an environment that people want, Hondurans want. Ciudad Morazan, where I live, is still building. There's a waiting list for people that want to live there in spite of the government opposition. So it is proving the value of the model. And that's what I write about in the book, Pioneering Prosperity, the Morazan model for free cities, because that type of governance, which is voluntary, entrepreneurial, contractual, is attracting people and creating a community that is, the people that live there are not necessarily libertarian or they're Honduran working people. And what they want is a safe environment to raise their families, the chance of jobs, the rule that they can live with. I'd say probably security is the number one issue because Honduras is a very dangerous country on the mainland. The goals and design of Morazan is to bring a better quality of life to Honduran workers. Now, Prospera, the other Zede, is on the island of Roatan, which is a resort island, feels much more to like wealthy Westerners who would like to move and live in a beautiful environment. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive. It's a very different market. And to me, this is really important because it shows that two free cities that are created under the same Zede law can be so different in the people they serve, the customers they serve. The customers of Morazan are mostly Honduran workers. The customers that Prospera serves are mostly Western entrepreneurs, cutting edge technology people. There's a lot of biotech, fintech, different kinds of technology that they can do there under that law that's not possible other places. So as far as expats, relocating is probably more attractive. People were probably more attracted to relocate to Prospera than to Ciudad Morazan. But even there, digital nomads, we have digital nomads who spend various amounts of time throughout the year and they come and go because that's what digital nomads do. But it's a great place it's like nicknamed Bootstrap City because it's a great place to bootstrap an online business. Now that's more for new entrepreneurs that are your audience who are over 50. But there are entrepreneurs over 50 who are also interested in bootstrapping new businesses or online businesses who could also benefit from it. But again, I'm not trying to sell people on relocating to Ciudad Morazan.
We are speaking about variety of models for different people and opportunities to be surrounded by like-minded people, which will be my next question about. And I believe the more type of cities or eco villages will be developed, it will show different options. Yes?
Absolutely. And that is really the whole point, is to be able to experiment with different types of rule sets, governance. Rule sets and governance can be the same thing. In the US and Canada, we've gotten so far away from those founding principles of individual liberty and personal responsibility that the countries were founded on, especially the US, the Declaration of Independence in the US, consent of the governed. We no longer have that. We no longer have the kind of values that the country started with. And that was why I wanted to leave the US, was because I saw the loss of freedom, that the changes in the culture were making it more difficult for people to serve their fellow man, to start businesses. It used to be very easy to start new enterprises, to be innovative, to create new means of serving customers. And that's changed in the US. And I think the same for Canada, that more and more regulations have piled on. More and more of the larger companies have captured the government through various means, campaign donations or capturing regulatory agencies or whatever, that it's more difficult now to create a new startup innovative company in the US than it used to be.
And the same in Western Europe, I believe, with variations, but in different countries. That's why actually stagnation is started. But now you touch the point that brought me to another question, like which I've had for years. So actually, search for the freedom, desire for the freedom, and there is different definition of freedom. It belong not so many people actually thinking about it. When I started in my circle, the conversation, even between educated people with kind of aspirations that I assumed I've had and have, people so unrealized, and historically, it was important for small percentage of people in each society. To be fair, as a part of society, want just to live good, to have their life, yes, with certain freedom to exercise family and business interest and obligation, but freedom in a big sense, it's not for everyone. And historically, from whatever I know, only small group of people like pioneers were leading this movement and were writing books, and they've had their meetings. Now it's online world conferences with desire of creating such new country, new society, like United States happened at the beginning. And after a couple of generations, other powers of majority were taking over. And from historical perspective, it happened many times. How you can be sure that it will not happen with Free City Foundation? Because of nature of people, and with all respect, people are more interested, as last year proved to me, even in democratic society. Actually, it was part of my big disappointment, because I thought when people for several generations were brought in a free West, like in United States and Canada, in United Kingdom and others, it's in their blood and breath. And when I've seen how quickly people can be not only brainwashed, but actually torn to a completely different direction, I thought, what is the value of all this?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Most people don't really want to think about freedom and that sort of thing. They want to be comfortable. And it's historically, it's like empires rise and fall. Rome with its bread and circuses. Rome was an empire, but the fall took hundreds of years, but it was the people voting themselves more freebies, goodies from the government. And that's exactly what's happened with the United States in the sense of people, the majority, if you have majority rule, then the majority is going to want to get free stuff, which has to come from the productive people within the society. And that's natural. That's human nature. But the productive people in the society, the people who want to build things, start businesses, innovate, create new ways of doing things, those people are the ones that are most likely to value freedom because they need it in order to do what they feel called to do, which is generally serving their customers. You're right about that small percentage. That's the people who are interested in finding freedom. Now, unfortunately, the whole planet is now divided into about 200 or so nation states, which claim all the territory. And so finding a place where those productive entrepreneurial type people can build things is becoming more difficult. And that's where free cities gaining autonomy, we're the productive people. We're going to come. If you give us a territory where we can have more freedom, we will build the things that you need that will benefit the surrounding area, maybe the whole country. And that's why I believe that free cities will work, because as things become more difficult for some countries, they know they need more prosperity, like Honduras. Honduras is a very poor country. They knew they needed more prosperity, and they knew the way to do that was to bring in productive people, give them the environment where they could start new businesses and create jobs and that sort of thing. That's not something that can be done by a government. And it's the US and Canada. Most Americans and Canadians don't really think about, and English, Europeans too, they don't really think about where does prosperity really come from.
And I'm surprised why. Why they were not educated in school? Why they were not, it should be in the bottom of fabric of society, but it was torn another way. And I would even say when word pendulum obviously moving to the left over the years, how all these new free cities can develop and work together with the left-wing government of these or other countries.
Yeah, it is a problem. It's something that has to be dealt with, that's for sure. And the thing creating the laws, the safeguards, is difficult. And it doesn't always work because obviously the current government, like in Honduras, they're the ones that have the guns. And even though they're breaking their own laws, you can't stop them from breaking their own laws because they have a monopoly on that's what a government is. And it's an issue that it's the biggest challenge that free cities face is creating a relationship with the host country where the host country continues to understand that it is to their benefit, the host government's benefit, to allow the freedom for producers to produce. And I don't have an answer to that. I don't know that anybody has one answer to that. I know a lot of people are working on it. And for me, that's what gives us hope. And so many of the people that are thinking about relocating to another country because they're not happy in like Europe or the US or Canada, the reason that they're thinking about relocating is because it's becoming more difficult. They are quite often business people. They're people who've had businesses for their whole lives or most of their productive adult life. And they're seeing the difficulties in continuing to produce. It's becoming harder for them to serve their customers, to produce the goods that they produce, goods and services. And so they're looking for a way to relocate. A lot of those people are over 50. Just because you're over 50 doesn't mean that you're not producing anymore. Even when you're over 65 or I'm 75, you still want to be producing something. You still want to be creating something and finding people you can serve. And those are the people that I think are most interested in and get most hope from the fact that there are people working on free cities. There are people that are doing that terribly difficult work of negotiating with governments to try to get the assurances that they can create a jurisdiction with enough legal autonomy to create a business environment and attract residents, attract workers. The companies need workers and workers need companies. And if we can create jurisdictions where to bring those people together, the people who want to create businesses that serve customers and the people who want to work for those businesses, or the people who want to work, period, who are not looking for just totally free handouts. That's what gives us hope that we can create those jurisdictions that will allow people to find the work they want to do, whether it's creating a company or working for a company that's innovative. The fact that Morazan and Prospera are continuing to exist and grow and prove their value can give hope to everyone that more jurisdictions like that can be created. More countries can be persuaded to allow pockets of freedom within their countries to attract the economic prosperity, economic development, and prosperity that their people need. And that's why I do my work, the work I do. It's why I'm promoting my book, to let people know that, yes, there are free cities. They're working. People are working toward it. And so there is hope that you can find exactly the kind of place that you want to live, where you really want to relocate because it has the legal structure you want, the rule set that you want, the environment you want. All of those things come together, and all of them are things that people have to consider when they're thinking about relocating.
Absolutely. And what I was thinking about listening to you and digging back in my knowledge of historical examples and models which work, I have such a question. I agree when there is economic zone and opportunities for people to create and work, it's excellent. But people are still interesting creatures. What's they have, first of all, and when we're speaking about these hubs which attract people from different cultures, different backgrounds, people have different vision about how to live together. People have different expectations. People have different rules that they used to have, and it's in their blood. Even they didn't think about it because it was normal when they were living back home in their communities. Human ideas, shared values and beliefs would or should unite people to live together in the community or in city, but I'm speaking now about community, living community, and share some responsibilities under the free city private contract. Because I believe that without common ideas and shared values, it's impossible to people to live and prosper together.
Yes, that is the beauty of the free cities concept, is the decentralization, that you can have so many different communities that can find the rules that give them the life they want. People are so different. And the technology that we have now, communication and transportation, especially, give us opportunities to find like-minded people and gather with them in specific places. Even if we can't change the government, we can't convince the government to give us legal autonomy, This is where places like intentional communities come in, that they can find a sort of de facto autonomy just by gathering like-minded people to live in a certain place together, and those people can make their own rules. They can set their own norms for what they expect from each other. And it's may not be part of the actual Free Cities Foundation, what the foundation is tracking, but it's still along the concept of free cities. They're free communities. They're people with very different values can gather together. This is, I think, like the network state concept, where people gather online because of the ability to communicate with people online. Like-minded people can find each other. And if they can agree on a territory and someone to buy the land there, or a way to finance buying the land there, they can create the physical community as well. There's some question we don't know yet as far as, depending on how successful these communities are, if they will have problems with the governing host nation that wants to control everyone. That is the whole idea of a government, is to control everyone. Perhaps a country like Mexico, which has less respect for authority for its own government. One of the unfortunate things about the U.S. is so many people still think that the government has their best interests at heart. And so they tend to be more obedient to whatever the government imposes, as we saw during COVID. But there are some places. I was in Mexico during COVID, and there were some rules that communities sort of had to follow.
Mexico was outstanding. I would say during the COVID, and I was following the news, and I was traveling during the COVID. I'm traveling in Mexico every year through different states. It's, I would say, more common sense rules were employed in Mexico comparing with all other countries in the world. And that's why I believe the current prosperity, it's one of the sources, the current prosperity, because people who stuck in Mexico, like foreigners, they actually like it. And they decided to buy their property, or maybe return after then and buy land, or actually to put their business over with all issue Mexico had.
And Latin America in general, I think, was a little bit, not all the countries in Latin America, but some countries in Latin America were a lot more relaxed about, the people didn't take too seriously the orders of the government, mandates of the government. It always depends on the individual. What are you looking for? If you're older and you're looking for a place to retire where you have more freedom, there are a lot of opportunities, and you have to look around. If you're still running a business, or want to run a different business, or want to grow a business, then looking for jurisdictions can make more sense. So it totally depends on each individual's values and desires and what they want. The models that I know about, I'm aware of a movement called Freedom, which is building intentional communities in Portugal and Spain that are away from the cities and nature oriented, and using technology to grow food, to live a more nature-based, healthy life. I know they're building. I know they're looking for residents. But again, this is a new movement.
Considering the diverse approaches to establishing a free city, for example, particular administrative regions you mentioned, C-steps, network states, eco-living, which model aligns most closely with your principles for better governments, like described in your book, and why?
The Morazan model for free cities, which is what my book is about mostly. It's free cities in general, but specifically the model that I think is best for the best form of governance is when there's where there's an owner of the land and title is maintained by that one owner. And that one owner is then responsible for creating the community, creating the environment, creating the rules that people want. I think that model is shows the most promise because almost all of the other models involve some kind of let's get together and vote and the majority rules. And I think when the majority rules, it's like what you said about the majority of people are not interested in freedom. And when the community is being ruled by people who are not interested in freedom, it may be founded by people who are interested in freedom, but then it's allowed to be ruled by people who are not. You're going to get the whole breads and circuses kinds of things. You're going to get people voting for whoever promises them the most freebies. And I think that's dangerous. I think it's also voting is also counterproductive for the people who do it because it's certainly counterproductive for the people who want something different from the majority. But even for the majority, they're voting for things that sound good to them, but they don't necessarily. There's no way that they can spend the time to really learn about all those issues that they're being promised. Like the politicians are promising them all these things that we're going to do that'll make this better. But there's two basic problems. One is that you don't know whether the politician is going to keep their promise. But the other is, even if the politician keeps their promise, you don't really know whether that even makes sense. So many politicians talk about things that make no economic sense. If a politician is saying we're going to tax the rich and that's going to pay for everything, that shows a total ignorance of basic economics.
No, it's what Marx told. It's a line from the Marxism. I immediately recognize it, and people think that it's something new. It was all played before.
People think, oh, that sounds good. I'm not rich, so if I can get money from the rich people to pay for the things I need, this is great. I'll vote for that guy. People will vote like that because they don't understand basic economics. They don't understand that this is not going to work. All you're going to do is drive away the people that could create the wealth that would benefit you.
Joyce, I can tell you, I was speaking even with pretty educated people in Canada, United States, with degrees in economics, experience working in different consulting. And they were telling me, not exactly this example, that it's good to tax. And I thought, how it can be good? You understand how economic are working, how is it country need to invite people with ideas, but you will repel them all. So what is good? It sounds good because it's what populace like to hear, but in real life, it just shows me that people absolutely not educated, at least in the history of last century.
Yeah, and see, that's, to me, representative democracy was such a major improvement over absolute monarchy that when the U.S. was established and we the people will vote and will decide and make the own rules, and that was such a major step above absolute monarchy. But now, with our evolution in a lot of ways, and especially in technology, representative democracy does not make any sense because the people are wasting their time. The vast majority of people just want to have a good life, live peacefully, raise their families, maybe have work they like, but they're being asked and say, oh, as a citizen, you have to educate yourself and vote. And so they have to vote for some politician that they don't even know whether the politician has any idea what they're talking about, whether the politician will keep their promise, whatever the promise is, or whether what they think will happen from those policies, even if the policies are put in. Will that actually happen? And most people have no way to know that. Very few people really understand the way basic economics works. Even people with economics degrees. AOC is supposed to have this economics degree, and she has the least understanding of basic economics of any congressman I can think of, other than maybe Elizabeth Warren. But they don't understand that all they're doing, if they're trying to eat the rich, they're just chasing off the rich.
No, they're just activists with a degree. And I don't have any respect, for many institutions, educational institutions with high rank, which even a couple of years ago was dream of many parents to send their children if they have means.
Yeah, the educational system in the US and Canada and Europe has gotten so bad. I know, especially in the US. That's the one I'm familiar with.
No, Canada is the same. And you know what? Many people around me, when I see in Facebook, and people who understand from Eastern Bloc, I would say from Soviet Union, who recognize the changes and who complain about what's going on, and some of people like me went through the several immigration till we established our life in Canada or United States, say, okay, we understand that but where to go? What, like there is no other place, like only maybe Mars or other planet which is not inhabited. And I didn't want to introduce yet because this topic is still new, because I believe these people, and many of them after 50, when they mean where to go, they mean where is this idea like utopia island where I can comfortably relocate to and have at least lifestyle and comfort of lifestyle I have in Canada, or say in United States. And as far as I know, such a place does not exist. Speaking about level of comfort, because here you should understand and what are your values. You cannot have all. It should be compromised. What is more important for you? If level of comfort and actually more and less life without distraction, okay, be where you are and complain, I don't know, inside your room. Or if you really looking for something, I believe that Free City Foundation and project under this umbrella soon, it's not today, but soon will provide living examples. It's why I am trying to bring this awareness to people. It exists, it's developing. It might be not ideal and it's not for everyone, but it's for the people who really value freedom in their, I would say, authentic definition. And here I have a question which I was thinking as well, balancing profit motives coming from the Free City Foundation or actually any project of such a kind with individual rights and freedom is a delicate act. Profit, because it should be profitable, and there's our personal desires, rights, and freedoms. How do free private cities aim to achieve this balance, considering the long-term implication for societal welfare? It was not carved stone. And it's not for everyone. People who at the beginning were attracted to such model, as we're all developing or our needs are changing, were disappointed. And here I'm speaking about profit motives, which is even more complicated element of society.
The example that I can use is Morazan, that Massimo Massoni is the founder of Morazan. He's an Italian businessman who built a conglomerate in Central America over about 20 years. And his idea was to create a city that allowed a better quality of life for Honduran workers than what they were able to get anywhere else. And that was his intent. And of course, he intended to make a profit at it, because the only way that something can stay in existence is if it's generating profit. If it's not generating profit, if it's like, oh, I'm going to make this city for the Honduran workers, but I don't expect to make any money, you're going to run out of money eventually, and then it dies. So it has to be profitable. So balancing profit against individual rights is the way to do that is to create a rule set that makes sense to the people and communicate that. So all of the rules and the norms and the laws, everything that applies to Ciudad Morazan is on the website, morazan.city. And people can go there and they can see exactly what it is. Now, individual rights, one of the things and culture and values, one of the things about Ciudad Morazan, there is one rule that's very foreign to Honduran workers, that it was something that they had basically never heard of and thought was stupid or whatever. One of the rules is that you can't throw garbage on the ground. You can't throw your trash on the ground. You have to put it in garbage cans, receptacles, trash barrels. And in Honduras, for a number of reasons, this is not part of the culture. But what happened was, what experience showed was this particular rule ended up, people had to follow it or they would be kicked out. And very quickly, they adopted it. There's trash barrels all around the community, so it's easy to follow. And everyone deposits their trash in the trash barrel. And now the community, Ciudad Morazan, is one of the cleanest communities in Honduras. And people take pride in that. Even when you have a rule like that is contrary to the culture or of your target audience, or seems like it was something that people would object to, but it's not a big enough deal to say, oh, that's a deal breaker. I'm not going to live there if I have to throw. I don't care about the safety and all this good stuff if I can't throw my trash on the ground. Obviously, it's a small enough rule that people could adjust to it. And now it's one of the things that they take the most pride in is the cleanliness of their community. And so now nobody would think of, even new people coming in, they don't even think about throwing trash on the ground because that's not done in Ciudad Morazan.
Yeah, if you see it's clean and there's this beans and it's really attract people, specifically if it's not common in outside cities and society.
And so that's something that Massimo believed that would create an environment that people would like and his customers would like. And he was right. His customers liked that rule, even though they wouldn't have expected to like it. So that's where an entrepreneur is thinking about what do my customers need as well as what they want. What they think they want may not be exactly what they need, but when you create it and they see that I hadn't thought about that I needed that. I didn't know that I needed to live in a clean community, but wow, this is really nice. So that's where entrepreneurial governance and the profit motive. And he makes more profit if people like living there. He makes the rules that are that will create the environment that people will be happy in, so they won't want to leave. And so that more people will want to move in. And that's why there's a waiting list. He can't build fast enough to satisfy the waiting list because the people that live there are very happy. These are families that for like the first time, they can let their children go out and play unsupervised. They can go out after dark and sit in public places after dark without worrying about crime.
And where are they working? They have some industrial park or facilities to work on?
Unfortunately, the government threatened to expropriate any businesses that came into Ciudad Morazan, came into the Zede. They couldn't shut down the Zede, but they could threaten the businesses that wanted to locate there. So we didn't get the manufacturing jobs in that we wanted and expected. So had to pivot to a residential community. But there are a lot of factories around in the area. And so the residents work in factories in the area, or we have a wide range. It's not necessarily what you would think of as being totally like-minded because there are doctors, it's a neighborhood. They do have, what they have in common is that they're not criminals. Because if they tried to commit a crime or even be a bad neighbor, they would get kicked out. Their lease would not be renewed, and they would have to leave. So that's what makes it a good community for the people that live there, is that they know their neighbors are going to be decent people that don't cause problems. And we've got lots of families, lots of children. We've got a playground for the children, plenty of space. It's a community that works, and it works because the rules are right, because people want to live there, because they're given something of value. I think the main value proposition is the safety for the same price, that they don't have to pay. Hondurans are used to thinking of gated communities as being places where the rich live, totally outside the possibility of a working class Honduran living there. But they can afford to live in Ciudad Morazan. It's $120 a month for a nice 2-bedroom house. And that's unheard of. And that includes 24/7 security. So you can't ask for anything better than that. And that's why so many people want to live there. And then when they get there and they find that their neighbors are nice, decent people, that they don't have to worry about criminals living in the neighborhood, that really makes it so attractive to them. I really enjoyed living there. Now, it doesn't have a lot of the amenities because it's too small. It hasn't grown enough to have a lot of the amenities that we're used to in the U.S., but it's a nice place to live and nice neighbors. So I think that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, for this price and this place, and I understand that just successful one of examples and other communities will take over and adjust it, adapt to their target auditory. In here, I have questions which we're going to conclude. What other projects or emerging intentional communities would be a good match for 50 plus years old adults or like couples looking to move to communities where they can find like-minded and freedom-loving people? Can you name a couple of other projects?
I think there's no other project that has the legal autonomy of Morazan. And Prospera, of course, with people, it's a little bit more expensive, but it would certainly be a nice place for people over 50 to live, whether they're retired or still working or still running a business or whatever. So Prospera is definitely a good place. There are so many of the communities are so new that they're just getting their first residents in. Of course, the Free Cities Foundation website is keeping updated with the projects that meet their criteria. It's growing fast. Plug into the community so that you can see what projects are coming up.
Thank you very much, Joyce. It's actually one of the reasons we have this conversation today. And I launched my podcast to inform people about the emerging new projects, to get more information, to understand how it's working, because any relocation process takes time. And I believe for many people actually to implement, even plan to relocate, it takes exactly the time that new community would be growing and popping up in different countries under the different rules and jurisdiction. Thanks a lot for your insight, for the knowledge, for your enthusiasm. I believe we will meet again in some time where the more information will come, because it's a living project. It's all in progress, and progress, it's pretty quick.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that wraps up an illuminating discussion with Joyce Brand on the future of governance, the critical role of special jurisdictions, and how we can collectively contribute to a legacy of improvements and innovation. Joyce, thank you for sharing your groundbreaking work and insights with us today. To our listeners, we hope today's episode has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to think deeper about the governance models of tomorrow. The journey towards better governance is complex and challenging, but as we learned today, it's also filled with opportunities for innovation and change. Remember to subscribe to Age of Reinvention on your favorite podcast platform to stay updated on our latest episodes. We'll continue exploring ideas that push boundaries and ignite meaningful conversations. Until next time, keep wondering, keep questioning, and let's strive to live a world worth inheriting to future generations. I'm Emily Bron, and this has been the conversation about Free Cities Foundation. Thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.